things? If you're watching on the VOD, hello. Otherwise, hello to everyone who's watching live. How you doing? How's things? Hello to 3D Printing Newbie, and hello to Beowulf, Derek, and Sophie the Cat, both on Twitch and on YouTube. Hello. Let me get started. I think we're all good, so yeah. So how has everybody's week been? This one's obviously been a very interesting one. There have been a lot of launches, including, of course, Nvidia's, Intel's thing, of which, if you saw on Twitter, they were talking about how the dot in the eye of Intel is every possibility of the CPU. Yeah, it was really quite dumb, and I don't know why they did that, but hey, they've got a new logo that looks exactly like Logitech's. Hello to John, hello to Pranjit, hello to Harry, hello to F7, and hello to the Blessed Kabir. How you doing, man? How's things? Do you mean Intel's AMD adverts? Yeah, pretty much. It was I watched a little bit of it. It was surprising the number of times they mentioned AMD. And it seemed like they did quite the unfair comparison. They compared to a, what was it, like Chinese only market Lenovo laptop with a 4800U. So, and they didn't list the TDP for that, but they did list the TDP for their own chip, which I don't think matches up with what the TDP for that one should, the Ryzen chip should be. So, yeah, bit weird. But yeah, hello. Thanks to the car channel. Nice to visit your weekly Q&A. No worries, Tom. If for those of you who are haven't seen the post on YouTube or Twitter or whatever, I am starting a car channel called At the Wheel, and it is there's a video from a Renault press event already up, and then I'm doing a review of my 2013 Audi S4 as well. So. And then obviously load more videos. I'm planning on doing one a week, so if you're interested in watching some car videos from this idiot, then feel free to subscribe. But yeah, I'm glad you can make it. Also, hello to all of the people who have turned up. Intel had a bit of a stinker. Yeah, they kind of did. Intel's kind of been having a bit of a stinker for the last, 6 months to 3 years. Ahan, they are basically the same drive. So, yeah. Either or, basically. What do you call it? Come on, brain. The Gigabyte one has a copper heatsink which degrades, whereas the Corsair one doesn't. So maybe that one, but yeah, they're the same drive, really. When will the 3070 Trinity Hollow Zotac or Amp Extreme cards coming? So I believe the 3070 isn't coming until October. So, yeah. So at least then. But yeah. Sup, dude? A lot and not much. It's kind of a weird, thing. Weird balance. But yeah, it's been a crazy week for launches for sure. Nice. So first 2 weeks of October. It makes sense. It looks like they're staggering. It's the 3080, then the 3090 the week after. So I wouldn't be too surprised if the week after that, or maybe the week after that, would make it. Would be, the 3070. Speaking of the car video, was the car really that tiny, or are you just a big boy? So I'm 6 foot and reasonably wide. Like, I'm obviously not, henge, but I'm not overly slim. And yeah, the cars were quite small. I didn't adjust. I only had an hour with each car, so I didn't adjust my seating position to quite as good as it maybe should have been. Uh, so I looked a little bit bigger in the car than I maybe should have. But yeah. Da, 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 the 3090 is an absolutely insane by the looks of it. Indeed. The question will be how usable and how much power. What was I? Oh, have you seen the Digital Foundry hands-on with the 3080? Thoughts? Up until then, I thought the marketing 2x performance rubbish was bull, and but Digital Foundry don't strike me as liars. Quite the opposite. Yeah. So the only concerns that I would have with the Digital Foundry video is that inevitably Nvidia will have dictated what games they can show, what potentially even what results they can show. So, for example, Nvidia might have said, "We're going to give you this card. You can be exclusive. You can be the exclusive, media outlet to have this card on launch day when everybody's talking about it. Oh, but by the way, you can only test these games, or you can only publish results from these, games that we're, happy with the performance in." So while the results themselves can be perfectly accurate, and I would agree with you, Digital Foundry do not strike me as liars in any regard. You do have to keep in mind that it's not quite that doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture, and we will need to see fully independent reviews of the cards across a wide selection of games before we can know definitively how much more performant they are. Sophie the Cat, the answer is that I started it with two friends, and over time it effectively became just me. So it was it was a team. I now just consider you guys the team, I guess. Do you think these new cards will have the ability to stream compressed game data? It will give gamers meaning to have Gen 4 SSDs. So the RTX IO announcement would suggest that, although I'm not entirely certain how specific RTX IO is for those cards versus any RTX card versus just any NVIDIA card, or whether that's done more driver side or whatever. But yeah, sorry. Oh, I'm not a very well person overall, so apologies. But yeah, so we need some more information on that before I could tell you for sure. But it does sound like that is going to be a possibility. And what you call it? Someone was asking about the Samsung 980 Pro, which can supposedly do 9,000 megabytes per second or 9 gig per second. Fantastic. It's basically what we were talking about when the first wave of Gen 4 SSDs came about. That is a proper Gen 4 SSD rather than just having higher bandwidth limitations on standard flash and the same basic controller architecture. I do believe, however, though, that the Phison E18, which is what the new Sabrent Rocket 4.0 or whatever will use, has similar throughput numbers. The question will be whether it has a more optimized actual controller design for better performance across the board rather than just peak throughput numbers. Hello Joe, how you doing, man? Ahan, Corsair Dominator Platinum or G-Skill Trident Z Royal. I personally think that the Trident Z Royal is very gaudy. So I would I would personally go with the Dominator Platinums, but yeah. And you also asked what would be the best case between $300 and $400. Gosh, I don't know. I really like the Fantech Center Evolve X. That's still my favorite case, kind of all time. So, yeah, that. Yo, I was planning on buying an MSI Bravo because I heard it has very good temps. Should I? Ha 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 ha. No. Actually, I was testing the XMG Core 15 Ryzen. Now, technically speaking, the temps aren't actually any better on that, but it is a much better laptop. So feel free to check that out when that video comes out in like 2 weeks, like week and a half, I think. But yeah, it's a much better laptop. If I miss any questions, by the way, feel free to re-up them. 3D printing Newbie on YouTube today. I don't know whether I should go for the 3080 or wait for the 3070, upgrading from a 1080 Ti. So I too would be upgrading from a 1080 Ti. I would think that the 3080 would make it more worthwhile, but we don't know quite how. They said that the 3070 is faster than a 2080 Ti, which is great, except we don't know in what. Like, is that one game? Is that in a synthetic benchmark? Is that in ray tracing performance? Like, we don't know what that actually means, and so we will need to see proper independent benchmarks to see how it all compares properly. Like I said, if I miss any questions, feel free to repost them. Agree on all points. I had the same thoughts about Digital Foundry's video. They said the same thing about independent wider testing, and this is best case scenario games, but still is impressive. Indeed, it very much is impressive. But again, I'd like to see a wider selection of games tested as well, but still very impressive from what we've seen so far. How does the army process work on DIY PCs? The answer is that you diagnose what part is broken and you return it to the manufacturer or to whoever you bought it from. So it's individual components that you would return rather than obviously the whole PC like you would if you bought a pre-built PC. We need to do a team Gadget Joe team TechteamGB build off. Nice. Or something. You pick 3 or 4 people and I'll pick the same. That could be fun, indeed. Do you think RDNA 2 will outperform Ampere? So the one of the, like, what was it, engineers from AMD? I want to say maybe dude from AMD said, very interesting video launch. Can't wait to show you what we've been working on. With that said, I'm pretty sure they said that last time and it wasn't overly fantastic. So it currently seems like it could be quite difficult, especially for them to compete at the top end. But I am hopeful, but I've been burned before. So realistically hopeful. Do you think a Ryzen 5 3600 and a 3070 combo will be suitable for long-term 1080p 144Hz? Yes, definitely. Turing had 14 cards. Also counting for TI and super variants. Why does Ampere have only 3? So when they launched RTX, they only launched the 20... they only launched 4, right? And then they added more later. It's kind of what NVIDIA does, so we will see more cards coming out in the not too distant future, relatively. Do you have any 3000 series cards testing? Ha! No. Is it okay to be running, keep a laptop running all the time? Will it harm any components? The main thing that would harm is the battery, because you are likely keeping it on charge the whole time, and so you are wear cycling the battery and keeping it at likely full charge the whole time kind of thing, which degrades the life of the battery overall. So that's the main thing. Otherwise, not any more than any other component or any other system. Hey, love the channel. I have a 2080 Super and want to get the 3080. What adapter will I need to get for the power? So I think it will depend on what version you buy, but any cards that any cards that you purchase will come with adapters in the box. It is technically it's a standard 12-pin Molex connector. So if you did want to wire it yourself, that is technically a possibility. You would need to find the wiring diagram for it, but yeah, that is technically possible. And then otherwise, like I said, it will come in the box, and I suspect that there will be brains farting. Thank you, Stuart. Come on, brain. This happens. I'm like midway through a sentence, then my brain just shuts down, and I have no idea what I was talking about. What question? Thank you, Sean. What question was I answering again? It's bad, I know. Oh, right, the power adapters. Like I said, it'll come in the box. There will be ones that, more premium ones that will be available. I'm sure people like Cable Mod are already on top of it. So, yeah, it's a probably dual 8-pin to 12-pin. Hello, Riley. How you doing, man? Thoughts on the 3000 series GPUs? It seems very, very, like, optimistic. Seems like a very interesting launch. The question will obviously be how much real-world performance and performance gains you get, and what will real-world pricing actually be, as well as stock availability. And how well can AMD compete? Corsair Obsidian 500D RGB Premium SE, how is that case? Pretty big. It's like pretty massive. It's not bad. I can't tell you this, but if you want a Corsair case, you might want to wait a little bit. Although, I want to say that they're not replacing that one. So maybe not. Anyway, yeah, it's not bad. It is a little bit bulky, a little bit boxy for me, but everyone's got a preference. Thank you, Ish, and fantastic, Chris. Did you see the new rumor person? But talking about RDNA 2, CEO of Radiant replies. Harbor Canuck says, I'm not really sure what that is. So yeah, it is, what you call it? Like I said, I'm hopeful, but we've been down this road before. I've been burned. We've all been burned before with the AMD hype trains, especially for the GPUs. So, yeah, we'll see. Hello, I have a 980 and an i7 5930K. Thinking of buying the upcoming 3070. Plan was still to go budget with a Ryzen 3600 on an A520, but fearing bottleneck. Playing 1440p, maybe 3700X is better. So the A520 board is fine if you never want to overclock. Otherwise, go B550. Even a cheaper one, I would probably recommend towards that. And then otherwise, if you're playing at 1440p, your CPU isn't terribly like bottleneck heavy. A 3700X might be better, but honestly, just the 3600X is probably just about as good. And especially if you want to stay budget, I think that would probably be where I would go with it. Lazy streaming, I do. It is my full-time job, so I should damn well hope I do. To run Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K with ray tracing, 60 FPS plus. We have no idea. You're talking about unreleased graphics cards and an unreleased video game. So yeah, no clue. So the question I would ask Riley is how what channel are you connecting over? Are you connecting over 2.4, 5, or are you connecting over multiband, so both? Is there wireless interference in your area? You can download like Android and iOS apps that can check that for you. Yeah, that. And are you using the like cheapest adapter? 5 gigahertz, fair. Can the ASRock B450 Steel Legend run RAM at 3500 megahertz? 3500 megahertz is a very weird frequency to choose. I would assume you mean 36 or 34, but I think so. I'm pretty sure I've run 3600 megahertz with a 3rd gen Ryzen. How much does that cost? Again, like 1. Yeah. Yeah, 1. Hi Andy, I still have a 4770K and a Asus 2070 Super. It just kills any new game out there. I don't really see a point. What would you do? What do you think? What do you think? There you go. So the thing that you're very much right there. If you have a system and you are happy with the performance you are getting, there's no reason to upgrade. Like, yes, the new cards look fantastic. Yes, the performance that they offer seems brilliant, and the value proposition that they're offering for that for the performance seems great. But if you have a system that you're happy with, you don't need to go and upgrade, because the system you have already does what you need it to do. Yes, if you want to play things like Microsoft Flight Simulator, or what's the other one? Like, isn't Red Dead a horrendously unoptimized game? Stuff like that. Yes, you might consider upgrading, but if you're happy with what you have, you don't actually need to upgrade. Hello, is the Ryzen 3700 X too weak for the 3070 for video editing? Can I game while rendering with 16 gigs of RAM? What CPU under 330 do you recommend? So, 1, we have no idea. It's an unreleased graphics card. 2, probably not. I have 64 gigs and I already have trouble. And even with 32, it depends what you're editing. If you're just editing like simple, say 1080p content, then probably. But if you're editing higher res, like 4K, if you're editing longer, complex projects with a lot of different, clips, footage-wise, depends what editing software you use. There's a lot of variables there, but generally I would say no. And the answer is that the 3700X is a great option right now, and for your budget, that's probably the best one you can get, especially if you want to do editing as well as gaming. Hello, Morin. How you doing, man? Hello, editing to PC and 1 per week game. Have a Red Dragon 5700 XT. What CPU? The 3800 XT probably, because, or even 3700X, because you say editing PC primarily, the game performance on that CPU is still plenty fine, and you get more cores and generally more performance with the 37 or 3800 chips over the Intel ones, if I remember rightly anyway. Hello, Starman, man. How's things? I'm not great, but I'm not dead, so that's that. That's something. Um, your personal choice, Intel or AMD. So right now I'm using an AMD CPU. And if I was going to build a PC, there aren't too many situations or scenarios where I would pick an Intel CPU over an AMD one right now. Um, with that said, I have run a number of Intel CPUs up to actually the 6700K that's still sitting on that shelf. So yeah, uh, I wouldn't consider myself a fanboy of either. Um, Generally speaking, anyway. And so whatever is the best value for money and performance at the time is what I would choose or recommend. Um, Mike, just about. Still talking about it, but still. Seen someone selling a 2080 Ti for £390 on Facebook today. Mental. Yes, it is. Because you can buy them new for 1500 still. Which is just. But yeah, it's mad world. What's a good budget upgrade from a 1063 gig? Gosh. Kind of depends what your budget is. I would probably say, yeah, it kind of depends what your budget is really. The 10400 thoughts. I have reviewed the 10400F. It's fine, but I would probably buy a Ryzen 3600 or 3600X instead. You do get slightly more gaming performance with the 10400F, but that's only when you run faster RAM with a Z series board, and Jesus, that's expensive. And yeah, you get sort of less features and overall power. Is a clear CMOS button worth it? Honestly, I tend to, even on boards that have them, I have a habit of forgetting they exist and just pulling the CMOS battery out to reset it. So personally, not really. Is it a nice to have? Yes. And you know, if you're planning on, if there are other factors that could sway you to buy the, I assume, more expensive motherboard that has a clear CMOS, I wouldn't say no, but yeah. Are you a student? No, I haven't been a student in like 5 years. Is YouTube your full time? Yes, yes it is. It has been my full time for like 5 years. But your video struck a good point. I think a lot of the other outlets have missed it when you're saying the 3070 is faster than a 20 Ti, but in what though? Yeah, I mean that's the thing, is that we don't know if that was, you know, one game, if they're a 20 game average, or if that was in ray tracing performance. Probably not, because they showed that in a different graph, but still. So we need to wait for truly independent benchmarks before we can make any proper conclusions. Anyway, and also thank you, Martin. He says, "How to say, Andy, your first car vid was brilliant. You're natural at it, very pro. Thank you very much. It was literally an entire day of filming and then another entire day of editing. So, yeah, it was good. I actually finished filming my the review of my my own car, my 2013 Audi S4. So that will be up next week. Good graphics card for 3600 without any bottlenecking. So the thing is that you can't ever have no bottlenecking. There is always going to be a bottleneck in your system in some way, right? Whether it's your what you call it, whether it's your CPU, whether it's your graphics card, whether it's storage, whether it's like VRAM, for example, that can be a bottleneck, or whether it's your display effectively, because you're now pushing so many frames that you can't you're not making use of it. There is always a bottleneck, and it's not as simple as having, like, this CPU bottlenecks X amount with this graphics card. It's not really that simple because it's a sort of sliding scale, where no matter what graphics card you have, the better the CPU you put with it, the better the performance will be from the exact same graphics card. Thank you very much, man. Thanks. So yeah, it's a sliding scale. It's not that simple, effectively. Long story short is that the 3070 seems like a pretty good shout if you're willing to spend that much. Otherwise, an RX 5700 XT. Is a 1650 or 1660 still worth buying? It kind of depends what you're after. Obviously, we are soon to, or we expect that there will be refreshes of those cards, but it might not be for another 6 months or so. And obviously, with the AMD cards upcoming, we assume anyway, that could be a reasonable thing. That's not to say that the 1650 and 1660s aren't reasonable cards. They can still play games, but you're probably playing them at medium settings, even at 1080p. So yeah. True, although there will be a whole lot of people who buy it for maximum EP, as Dr. Ian Cutcher says. Is the 3070 worth it if you're only using 1080p? I feel like if I'm getting one, I'm pushing myself into crazy monsters. So the short answer is that that's obviously the lowest end card you get right now. Unless you're pushing 180 or 240 hertz, probably not. It's probably a little overkill. My question would be, what card do you have at the moment? They have not, at least as far as I'm aware, they haven't contacted me since I posted the video. I have not heard anything about my unit being defective in any way. But yeah, it didn't it didn't seem like it was a unit defective issue rather than a product defective issue, I suppose. Can you recommend good VR goggles for PC? So it kind of depends on your budget, really. I have the Valve Index, which is a like £1,000, $1,000 headset. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. I love it, but it is very, very expensive. So if you're looking for the cheaper end, Oculus, the Quest seems to be a pretty good shout. Although they are, They are. It is Facebook, and you now require a Facebook account to use your Oculus devices. Notice MSI just announced another bunch of laptops today with a new logo. Yes, they are like business laptops with the new Intel chips, which is funny because I wonder if they're cooled well. Does Chrome download via RAM? So technically, most programs like Chrome do get loaded into memory, but it does save to storage. So yes and no, kind of everything does, but nothing does. Your thoughts on Tiger Lake? It looks like mobile chips. In the very specific benchmarks that they quoted, it seems reasonable. I want desktop. How much percentage of performance will TI versions of the 30 series might bring? So we actually don't know if there is going to be a TI anymore. It kind of seems like they're tailing that off because they introduced Super most recently. So I suspect that there will be a Super variant of cards, but I don't think that'll be for another year probably. Um, so yeah. And one question: did you lose your mind after seeing the RTX 3090 availing, and will you be pre-ordering? So the general answer is that you shouldn't pre-order really anything without seeing proper benchmarks. Um, so no. Um, it seems like a very impressive card, definitely. It seems like the what you call it. It very much is a Titan class card. Being sold at what you call it 2080 Ti pricing, which cool ish. But yeah, it's an absolute monster. At least it seems anyway. And yeah, benchmarks. Yo from Glasgow. Hello, Kieran. How you doing, man? They may just go for supers. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking they'll do. The 3080 Ti, 39 Ti super, indeed. One day, probably not. Ryzen 5 3600 megahertz or 10400 with 2666. I would go the Ryzen chip personally. Especially with the slower RAM, you are getting reasonably similar gaming performance, but I believe you get more, say, editing or streaming performance type thing with the Ryzen chip instead. And I thought you were Sophie, but then it's hard to convey satire over text, over the internet. So yeah. By the way, if I missed any questions, feel free to repost them. Chat moves reasonably quickly, and I take a whole load of time to answer stuff. So yeah. I haven't been able to find the Acer monitor I reviewed in stock anywhere. Interesting. I think it's a reasonably new model. The was it VG 270, which is the last gen version. That one does seem to be in stock, I think, but I think the 271 has recently replaced it. So that could be a problem. Obviously, COVID is still a thing in terms of production and supply chains. And I think that it is quite a popular monitor. So, combination of factors. Any news when you're getting your hands on a few cards for testing? Do you have any idea of what you want? So the answer is right now no. I am not. I haven't heard that I am definitely getting any actually. So we'll kind of have to see. I do expect that I will have some in the not overly distant future, but whether I'll get any for launch is probably a different question. So, and as far as what I want, one of each, pretty much, or two of each, ideally. I wish. I mean, there was quite a few people who bought them with my affiliate link, so maybe. But yeah. Any ideas for relatively inexpensive lighting for the workshop when it's finished? Needs to be good for photo and video. So define relatively inexpensive because you can get LED panels like the ones I have. Actually, I think newer NEEWER people like Amazon do like 500 LED panels that are really pretty good. I think they're about £100 or so, maybe 150 for a full kit. So two of those, for example, would be very good. But yeah, it kind of depends what you what your budget is for that. Jail RAM manufacturer, does it suck? it's normally a more budget offering, but I can't say I've ever had any problems with them, so no. Um, I picked up the 34-inch ultra-wide AOC after watching your review and was a bit worried, but the blacks are pretty good and great for games I play. Took a while to get my hands on it. Fair, nice. I'm glad you enjoy it. I remember that one being rather impressive, especially for the price they were offering it for. So yeah, nice one. I've got studio lighting, just need fill light for the whole workshop. Right, got you. LED bulbs, that kind of thing. Off the top of my head, I'm not overly sure. I mean, technically, you could still go with those LED panels and just have them like top mounted or whatever, but that might be a bit strong. Yeah. I think they'll be forced to release a 3070 Super with more VRAM to counter a big Navi. It's possible. We really had to see what the what you call it, the 3070's performance is actually like, and what Big Navi has to offer. Started off at 419, but settled at 499 after the reviews come out in COVID. Fair, yeah, that makes sense. Kind of a shame that you couldn't get it for quite the price, but yeah, still not bad for an ultra wide, for a good, well, a reasonable ultra wide anyway. What's the difference between a $30 to $40 $750 watt power supply and a $70 to $100? So the short answer is probably reliability. It kind of depends on what you mean. The $100 one might have what you call it, modular power supply connections, whereas the cheap one probably won't. Yeah, if you're looking at like a say Chinese brand, $30 to $40 750 watt power supply, I would go with a named brand, Seasonic, EVGA, Corsair, Cooler Master, like Be Quiet. Those branded power supplies tend to be a lot more reliable. And bearing in mind that your power supply connects to every single part of your computer, and if it fails and has a surge as it fails, it can wipe out your entire system, including things like storage, especially if it is what you call it, come on, solid state. So yeah. Have you got a crystal ball on your desk to answer some of these questions? Do you know I should get one? I could actually answer some of them. Any experience with 1440p ultra wide AAA gaming, high ultra settings, texture VRAM use, 8 gig nearing capacity? I actually haven't really looked at VRAM utilization in a very long time, I'll be honest. So I can't say that I've seen that happen. It wouldn't overly surprise me, especially with newer games. The obvious one being Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I don't think that I'm overly I'm educated enough on the topic to give you a proper or a useful answer there, I'm afraid. Maybe something to look into though. Are you ever going to do networking vids? So I've reviewed a few networking parts and stuff before. I think the what you call it, the thing is that because I don't have like an office or whatever, I certainly can't do many networking project videos. I live in a rented house where, as you can see, I can't mount things to the wall. I've got my lighthouses on posts and what you call it, insulation on the stuck to the walls. So those sorts of project networking videos, building a pfSense box and running 10 gig everywhere kind of thing, which I would very much like to do, isn't really an option at the moment. But maybe one day. Man, 3D printing UB, that's not great. Where does 4 RGB stock fans from the case go, and what port want to buy a new motherboard? So it depends what case. Some cases have an RGB controller built into them or attached to them on the back, and some of them give you a splitter cable that will then let you hook up to a standard common cathode. Yeah, common cathode 4-pin RGB header. So 12 volt and then RG and B. Isn't it RBG normally? I think. Could be wrong. Nabil, no, they're better than Wi-Fi. Magic 8 Ball, outlook not so good. All seem relevant with enterprise mail. Yeah. Ultimate PC combo Ryzen RTX. Seems like it. I've got some emails. Oh, one of those from Intel. Thank you for attending Intel's virtual product launch event. No worries. Is there any RGB fan out here that has bars that hold the bearing and the motor on the intake side? So you mean like a reverse type fan? Off the top of my head, no, but I'm fairly certain there are some. No worries then. I meant to connect to Ethernet together. Oh, right, I see. Then still no, as long as you're not running over, what is it, like 300 meters or 100 meters of Ethernet? No. And as long as it makes a solid connection, again, no. Rock Remastered. I would disconnect it from the power and get a hairdryer. Thanks, Technically Anonymous. Thank you very much. Do you think the new features for streaming on the 3000 series will replace current OBS? So it seemed like NVIDIA Broadcast was not necessarily the streaming tool itself, but tools that you could then import into something like OBS, for example, as a camera element or whatever. But yeah, it looks interesting. I definitely don't think that it will replace OBS. So yeah. Did you pick your new car yet? Yes, Audi S4. I've had it for like 2 months. And I'm doing a review of it next week. So if you're interested in car content, I created a new channel called At the Wheel. If you want to check that out. Pretty cool. Do you think Gigabyte has done well with the B550 series compared to B450? Certainly, I think they've learned some lessons. I don't think that the VRM setups are quite as interesting as the B450 ones were, but yeah, I think they've done a good bit better for sure. My motherboard supports gigabit Ethernet, but network settings, it says that its limit is 100 meg. So what's it connected to, and what type of cable are you using? Is it Cat 5? Is it Cat 5e? Is it Cat 6? Cat 7? Those are the two factors. What do you expect in terms of performance in 3060 and the 3050? Linear extrapolation would tell us that the 3060 should probably be about as good as a 2080, which would be very nice to see. and therefore 3050 would be about as good as 2070, give or take. So that would be very good, especially if it is for that sort of pricing. And whether we will see an RTX 3050 or whether it will be a 2050 something, you know what I mean? That questions to be answered, but yeah. Fair play, Joe. Nice. My review of my car will be out next week, I think on Tuesday or so. I did a video from a Renault press event, though, if you want to check that out. That's already live. I posted about it on Twitter and on YouTube community tab, so there'll be a link there. 2650. Yeah, that doesn't seem great, does it? And yeah, Tesla, I don't really test cases, so I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid. Like I said earlier, if you have any questions that you've asked but I've missed, then feel free to repost them in the chat, and I will answer them there. Do you think that Big Navi will draw higher power than the 30 series? So you're kind of talking about two still unreleased cards, and we don't know what the 30 series power draw is actually, and we don't know obviously anything about Big Navi at this point properly. So hypothetically, it could, AMD's track record maybe, but what do you call it? I would be hopeful that it doesn't. Is probably the key thing. Scott, yes, it's exactly that. It's also something that I really just personally don't enjoy testing, and cases just aren't something that I have a massive sort of interest in. So it wouldn't be very apt for me to be reviewing them. Yes, Steve is a much better source for case content than I am, so feel free. Yeah, Mike, I have the same question, but again, I'm still hopeful. So, what's your new car channel called? It's At the Wheel. I will find a link. I need 100 subscribers to get a custom channel URL. So it's currently whatever YouTube random generated for me. But I'll post the link to the video of the Renault event that I did, so you can check that out if you fancy. What do you think about Intel's 11th gen? Is it going to claw back or keep losing ground to AMD? So as far as I'm aware, Intel's 11th gen is, especially on the desktop side of things, rather than the effectively ultra low power mobile, is going to be very similar in architecture to the Intel 10th gen, and well, we all know how that turned out. So I'm honestly not overly hopeful for the next generation, or maybe two, depending on how they play it. But I think in 3 years' time, I think we'll have a very strong sort of Intel presence back in the market. But I think it's gonna take a while for that to happen. You are quite far away. F7. Should I take a 2060 Super or wait for the release of the 3060? So the short answer is that you can probably purchase a 2060 Super and be relatively happy with the performance for another probably 6 months to a year before it's actually the 3060 is actually available in stock and at not insane launch prices. So I would probably do that. Awesome, nice, thanks, Dan. I have a dynamic mic, so it doesn't need phantom power, but I turn it on, now it makes a noise in the recording. So that could be the microphone itself, it could be the cable, it could be the signal processing, so your analog to digital converter, whatever you plug the mic into. There's quite a lot of reasons why microphones can pick up noise, and it's not something that I can easily diagnose without hearing and that kind of thing. Yeah, grounding, that too. I remember pre-Ryzen, everyone felt like Intel was holding on to the good stuff and just giving us partial upgrades, but it turned out they had nothing up their sleeves. Yeah. Overclockers now have prices for the 3070, looking at £470. I think that's right for what the what you call it? The come on, brain. Nvidia was talking about for pricing. That doesn't sound like price gouging at all. So, yeah. You got a good recommendation for a budget B550 board. The problem is that budget and B550 don't currently go overly well together. And so it kind of depends what you mean by budget. The ASRock Steel Legend isn't the cheapest board in the world. It's probably budget by B550 standards, and that's really good. And then I think that the B550 Pro VDH or whatever it's called, that's meant to be very good as like a legitimately cheap board. Are you going to be driving a Miata or in the UK MX-5 anytime soon? So yes, well maybe. When space becomes available, me and a friend are intending on purchasing a MX-5 Miata for a track car, effectively. So maybe, and that will be documented. The worst car I've technically only ever owned three: a Renault Clio Mark II. And then a Volvo S40, and now the Audi S4. So in terms of owning, I guess the Clio, because the head gasket blew at 40,000 miles. But in terms of driven, now that's a very different question, because I've driven a lot of cars. A Ford Ka, a Ford Ka, that's probably the worst car I've driven, because the throttle response is nothing full throttle, so you can't like gently do hill starts very well. The clutch feels like a puddle of mush. The brakes felt horrible, like very bitey and then nothing. The steering felt painfully light and disconnected, and the what do you call it? They designed it such that the water that runs off of the windshield, especially when the car is stationary, rolls into the top of the front suspension struts, the strut tops, which causes them to rust away. So yeah. Scott, yes, they did. They what you call it? I was quoting from Ben, who is one of the UK NVIDIA PR reps, who tweeted about it during the stream. So it's not bad, but bear in mind that you won't be able to overclock, and you might not even have Ryzen 3rd gen support on that as well. So yeah. No worries, Tal. What technology or product are you most excited in the coming years? In the foreseeable future, the NVIDIA cards, the 4th gen Ryzen, then Big Navi, and Intel having some genuinely competitive chip. With that said, I've so many cheeky offers in 2080 Ti's at the moment. Nice. Enjoy. So yeah, with that said, these live streams happen every week, every Thursday, 8 p.m. UK time. So if you have any more questions, if you fancy sticking around, next week, there will be one next week. So feel free to pop back. If you're new here, I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So there'll be a new video tomorrow, Monday, Wednesday, and then another stream. Car channel wise, I'm planning on doing videos on Tuesdays, so that pretty much fills out the whole working week. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Dan has one question, and just for you, Dan, I will wait. You have like 5 seconds before I go. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and yeah, I will see you guys next week. Dan still hasn't asked this question. Dangerous. Jonathan, yeah, they're getting even cheaper than that now. It's kind of insane. Right, if you have any more questions that you need answering right now, feel free to head over to the Discord. It's linked in the description. But otherwise, I'll catch you guys next video and next week for the stream.